Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny. I'm here with Tomas, one of the, I would say, one of the main designers, head of the company for Free League Publishing. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's about right.
And today we're going to talk about a very special project coming out for Dragonbane, which I'm very curious about because I have never heard of this setting before, even though this setting's been out for, I would say, decades. But first things first, how do you pronounce the name of this? It's a Trudvang?
Yeah, I mean, the most I've heard it sort of in English is Trudvang. In Swedish, it's more like Trudvang, but Trudvang in English is fine. Yes, whatever, that works.
And I'm really excited about this. I feel like there's two types of games that game masters play. They either homebrew their own, or they take a setting and then build a world around that. And I'm excited that Dragonbane now has the option for both. Um, so
Yeah.
I've I've heard deals with Norse mythology. I heard it deals a little bit with a bit of Swedish history, a little bit. Um, what can you tell? What is Trudvang exactly?
Right. I mean, it's a fantasy game setting first and foremost, but it certainly has draws heavily a lot of inspiration from Nordic, Norse, Viking mythology, but also like Celtic mythology and others like folklore. So it has such kind of a twist to it. So some of the creatures actually lean a little bit towards things that you can actually meet in Vaesen, which is actually also draws from like Nordic mythology. So that, but yeah, it is a fantasy setting for Dragonbane. So you also have your dwarves, you have elves. They're not exactly like your typical Tolkien versions, but you do have that. You have dragons and trolls and things. So and it's the setting was originally created. I mean, Dragonbane has a long history in Sweden and the Nordic Scandinavian countries. It came out the first edition back in the 80s, and a lot of the stuff that we have been doing for Dragonbane so far draws a lot of inspiration from like the early 80s stuff. Like even the Path of Glory campaign was actually released in the early mid 80s, but then we reimagined it and upgraded it up to the current edition. But the core edition of Dragonbane kind of leans toward that. But then Trudvang actually came about around 25 years ago, so around the turn of the millennium, around that time, where a new publisher, uh, before Free League took over the Dragonbane name and brand and license in Swedish only. It was like the game Drakar, and then Trudvang was their campaign world that made quite a bit of a market. It was a bit of a step away from the classic Dragonbane stuff, which was more sort of classic fantasy in the Tolkien vibe, as our normal Dragonbane game is also. So Trudvang took a step away from that and did something a little bit different in that it leaned very heavily into the Nordic folklore and the Viking feel and theme, and so it does. So it sort of leaned heavily into that, and that edition of the game was fairly successful for a while. Eventually, that took its life of its own, and Trudvang became a game of its own. It was disconnected from the Dragonbane brand, and it became an RPG. It was actually released by the previous publisher, Right Minds, under the name Trudvang Chronicles. I don't know. That's about not quite 10 years ago, but almost. And they had a couple of books out for a while in that setting, so it was separate from Dragonbane. But then what happened eventually was that Simon, the big board game publisher, actually published a board game called Trudvang Legends a couple of years back. And then Simon ended up actually acquiring the whole setting, the whole brand, and everything from Brightman. So it actually now the whole thing rested with Simon. But then there has always been a fan base for Trudvang still there, and especially since Rightmans didn't do anything anymore with it, they didn't own it anymore. There were some questions whether we could do something for Dragonbane since it started as a setting for Dragonbane. Maybe we could bring them together again. Since so, And we thought that'd be a cool idea because, like you said there, Dragonbane at its core doesn't have one official setting. It's a big tent. It's a game that can encompass multiple different settings of different vibes and tones and styles. So we thought, yeah, it'd be pretty cool to actually do that. So we reached out to Simon and managed to agree with them to do this as a Dragonbane campaign setting for TRUDVANG, and because there is so much done in TRUDVANG in terms of world building and art, and there's like a wealth of resources that we just felt needed to we shouldn't be lost, but should be brought back and be made available again. And we think the game system, the setting works well with the rule set for Dragonbane. We thought it's a good match. The tone is slightly different. I mean, we have the mirth and mayhem tagline for Dragonbane. I think TRUDVANG leans more toward the mayhem side. There can be fun, but it's not as it's a little bit more serious. It leans more into like culture gaming and really going deep into the world and so on. So, which we think is nice because even though to also showcase that Dragonbane can be more than just sort of a beer and pretzel type RPG that you play for a few laps. It can do that, but it can also be something you play longer campaigns with and going deeper into worlds and things like that. So that's why we think TRUDVANG is a good, like a branch of Dragonbane to show what the game can also be and to make that wealth of resources and world building available again.
So just so I understand what True Vang represents, because I think for most Americans when they think of Nordic lore or Norse mythology, they usually think two things. They think Vikings, and then they think the Asgardians, what they see in the superhero
Yeah,
movies
you're
nowadays.
right. Yeah.
But True Vang, even True Vang has a, to me, from looking at it and from what I'm trying to research about it, has a very different feel. Even like Dragonbane feels very fantasy,
Yeah.
while True Vang feels more like dark fantasy in a way of like The Witcher, for example, The Witcher
Yep.
TV
Yep.
show.
Yeah.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's right. It is certainly a bit darker than your core Dragonbane game. It leans, so it does have room for more of that, and it certainly has things in common with sort of Viking lore and mythology, but also draws from other sources. I mean, if you sort of have the Vikings TV show in mind, but you add like some really big trolls and dragons and stuff in there, then you're close to sort of getting to what this is. I mean, trolls and dragons and things were very much part of the world view of people back in the the Viking age. So I guess that just bringing them to life and dwarves and things that lived underground, all of that was part of the mythology. So that's just brought out and brought to life. So yeah, I think that cover you see there, which is a new piece by Paul Bonner, who's done a lot of the work for TRUDVANG. I think that shows a lot of what this game is about. It's about the dark forests. It's the big trolls and quirky characters and adventure. So I think that sort of sums it up pretty well.
Hmm. So the world book, I'm glad you brought that up. What type? So when I think of Dragonbane, I think about the conflict between dragons and demons and the kins, kind of
Yeah.
in between all that. For Trudvang, what is the adversary? What's the bad guy in this game?
Yeah. Well, it can be a number of things. We are also releasing a large campaign, a four-part campaign that was originally released as separate books, like previously. So we're sort of putting that back together and revising that. It's called the Black Sun. Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
that one. And there, basically, without, I mean, in that particular campaign, there is, I mean, the adversary is well, without going into spoiler territory, it's an entity that sort of it's on the world ending type of scale. I mean, the Viking sagas has this myth of Ragnarok, which is basically the end of the world that is brought to being or by some specific some creatures, and this is similar to the story in the Black Sun, that there are sort of mythological creatures even that you sort of face that are bent on bringing about the end of the world, basically. So it's a very epic scale, and very, and of course this entity has its servants and its manifestations that you have to deal with in this campaign. So yeah, it's you can certainly face both demons and dragons as well in Trudvang, but it's certainly, it's, especially this campaign is very much on a sort of a cosmic world-ending scale of things.
Mm. And the Black Sun, is that a new adventure, or is it like the last campaign was an update of classic adventures?
Yeah, a little bit like that. Actually, there's 4 parts, and they were released in the first, I mean, like around 20 years ago in Swedish. I think parts of it were actually translated by Riot Minds and released for True Line Chronicles. But we're really revising the whole thing to make it a bit more in line with, of course, the Dragonbane rule set, and also the way sort of others, like how we design adventures and things at Free League, because we sort of have to, even though we love the world building, we need to sort of present it in a Free League way. So that also means we're sort of reworking things quite a bit to make it. It's not just a reprint; it's certainly a rework, and bringing this campaign also to the English-speaking audience for the first time is a lot of fun. So those, and we also have the core editor and writer for this is called Magnus Seder, and he worked also with Trudvang originally. So we have people on board who were there when it started, and then we have, of course, our own design team working on it as well.
I'm glad you brought him up. Magnus wrote one of my favorite Middle Earth role playing game books back in the
Oh,
day.
right,
Yeah, so
cool.
I was very excited to see that he's involved with this as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but this is coming out on Kickstarter, and you're bringing out not one, not two, not three, but 4 books.
yeah. I know.
But
Yeah,
but before we talk about I guess the 4th book, let's talk about this one here, which intrigues me, the Book of Heroes. Now,
yeah.
is this book like new kins or new professions?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's part of what this book will be. Originally, we actually thought we'd have 3 books. So the World Book and the Book of Heroes were actually one book, but when we started working with this, but then we realized it'll be just too much to fit into one book, so we split it into 2. So that meant 4 books in total. And the Book of Heroes is, yeah, it's new professions, new kin or new versions of kin. I mean, in Trudvang, it's a bit different. You don't have halflings, I guess. There are basically, you have humans and dwarves and elves, but they're a bit different, and they're sort of subdivided, and that because we want to emphasize one of the culture gaming styles. So for example, yes, you have humans, but the kin are not just humans. You have actually Stormlanders and Midlanders and Viran, which are people on the western side of the continent, which are sort of, in game terms, actually treated as separate kin. So it makes a difference. Not just being human, but then, and the same with dwarves and elves. Are like 2 distinct types of elves and 2 distinct types of dwarves that are different from each other. So that's sort of, it's slightly different, but that's sort of, so that's what you get, and they will have their own specific abilities and things like that. Then you have professions, that are unique for Trudvang. Some are fairly familiar, and some are completely new. And then there are new skills, new secondary skills. The core skills will probably remain the same, but we're adding like secondary skills for like more world specific stuff. There's new heroic abilities that are sort of specific for this setting. And I think the mainstay, at least half of the Book of Heroes, is going to be new magic. There's a lot of magic in Trudvang. There's like 2 base types of magic. There's like more of a regular magic called Vithner Weaver. It's like more of a it's like normal magic, but it leans a bit more into like black arts and witchcraft. It has that feel to it. And then there is the other one, the other type of magic user is called the dim walker, which is a sort of a priest really for one of the religions in this world. There are like 2 main human religions, and then the elves have their own and the dwarves have their own. So it's like, depending on what the priest, what religion you're a priest in. You'll have that works sort of as a magic school. Each religion is basically a school of magic. So there's a lot of new magic in here, lots of new spells. So that's pretty much half the book.
And last but not least, the bestiary, or
Yeah,
Georgie's
yeah,
bestiary, if I'm pronouncing that
yeah,
right.
yeah.
If I may ask,
That is
who's Georgie?
Yeah, he's an in-game character. This has a bit of a history. There was actually a book by this name also released for the earlier editions, and it's a sort of and it's an in-game. It's like it's written more or less an in-game artifact, and that was a big sort of hit when that first came out. So that's been a thing. But basically, it's a bestiary for this world, and it's you can find anything in there from your sort of more like regular fantasy monsters like dragons and things, but then also the more of a like ice giants and strange things that are more of and different types of trolls and things like that come from sort of the Nordic myths. So it's very much a mix of that, and it's all illustrated by some really great people. So there's a lot of great art in that book as well.
Oh, I was about to ask you about that. The so I noticed that the art style is a different than from the Dragonbane core books.
Yeah,
Could you tell us about that?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was part of making TRUDVANG feel slightly. I mean, has its own feel to it, and that's also one of the big draws of the TRUDVANG setting, is that it's always had fantastic art by some really super talented artists. There's quite a few of them. I think maybe the two main ones maybe are Paul Bonner, who did the covers, the big color art, like the one we're looking at. I mean, he's super. He's done amazing work for decades for a number of publishers. So he's a he's a real master of the trade. Then a lot of the interior art has more of a sketch, is pencil style art, black and white, a little bit of an old school feel, but really brings out the sort of grittiness of this world. And I think most of that was done by Alvaro Tapia, who's a Swedish artist who's been also very experienced and doing fantastic work for TRUDVANG for decades. So there's like a lot to draw from, and this art is not it, I mean, it's not exactly like the art in the Dragonbane core, is because it has this black and white feel. It's a little less playful, a little bit darker, so that sort of brings out the difference in tone, but does a great job of bringing out what's unique in the style and feel of TRUDVANG.
Mm. And I want to showcase a little bit of the map that
Oh yeah,
that will be part of the
that is
Kickstarter.
exactly. That's the world, the map. That this is a new map, completely new. That was drawn by Francesca Barald, who's done a lot of art maps for us, also for Dragonbane. But I think she did a fantastic job on this one. So here you can really see the entire world of TRUDVANG, which is. I mentioned some of this before. Like you see, they have the Stormlands to the east, the Midland in the middle, and the Westmark to the west. And basically, where you're from in this world, that will make a difference on your stat. I mean, that will sort of you're not just. This is really a game where you know where you're from in the world and your connection to the world will matter. Whereas in the core Dragonbane, it's more about the adventure, the more of immediate adventure. So whereas here, it's more of a thing that you sort of go into this world and dive deeper into the world as such. So that's, I mean, how they're a little bit different. But yeah, this is the map of the world.
Mm. So this will be part of the Kickstarter campaign. What else can you tell us about it? I mean, Free League has always done a wonderful job with stretch goals and delivery promises and things like that. What can you tell us about the Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We're still in the planning stages, but yeah, I think so. I don't have a lot of detail on the campaign as such, but yeah, it's 4 books, so it's going to be it's quite a bit of work, of course. But we have I think we have a good plan and a good team in place to get this done in time. I mean, the idea is that this will be 4 books. There's a lot of material. We might do more on Trudvang in the future, but that remains to be seen. I mean, that's why this is like one branch of the Dragonbane tree, just to sort of show what else Dragonbane can be. So that's sort of the idea, that even if with these 4 books alone, you will be, there's a big campaign, obviously, that you can play, but also there's a wealth of world material and things that can keep a gaming group or a campaign going for a long time. So that, and we might do more of these, sort of branching out what Dragonbane can be and adding more setting. I mean, there is already a lot, even though we don't have one official world setting for Dragonbane. There's a bunch of third-party material that is being published. Like there is Windheim, which is done by a third-party publisher. There is another one, Arab Altor, which is a classic fantasy setting for the old Swedish version of the game that is just being released in Swedish and might come in English too. So basically, we want Dragonbane to be this tent pole, this centerpiece of a game, but then you can sort of branch out into the setting that you want to play in. So that's sort of the idea here, is that to show new sides of Dragonbane and to grow what Dragonbane sort of can be.
Mm. Do you know when the official Kickstarter campaign will be launched yet?
I mean, we're looking at right now like late February, but we haven't set the exact date yet. We need to, make sure everything is ready and so on. But that's what it's what it looks like at the moment.
All right, excellent. I will put a link to the Kickstarter page so that if you want to be notified when it launches, you can do so and be alerted.
Yeah,
Excellent. So I just have one more question for you.
sure.
For those that have just heard about this setting and maybe we're anxious, want to know more about it, would you recommend, I don't know, maybe a certain movie, TV show, or books? Is there anything you could recommend us to get our to
Hmm.
help as an appetizer?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I think I already mentioned the Vikings TV series. I think even though that's more historical, even though it's not that historical, it takes quite a few liberties with history. But and there's almost like, I think, magic in there as well. So I think that's not that far off from Trudvang. It's pretty, even though Trudvang goes further into the fantasy realm, I guess. Beyond that, I don't know. There's a bunch of films that sort of are into this territory. There was an old one that I remember called, I think, The 13th Warrior or something,
Hmm.
which I actually kind of enjoyed. It was a bit cheesy, but I sort of enjoyed it. Where I think Antonio Banderas plays a fighter who comes up north and then faces some monster in the forest. That had sort of a Trudvang vibe to it. Yeah, I think those two are the things that I can come to mind right now. But there is, I'm sure, plenty more. Of course, the Norse sagas themselves are the Edda and those old Icelandic sagas are also pretty good inspiration.
Mm. So viewers and listeners, if you've played Truth Vang in the past, let us know in the comments below what you love about it. What do you recommend that we check out so that we can be more familiar with this game? Because it sounds really awesome. Vikings, Norse mythology, dark fantasy. That all sounds like something I want to be a part of,
Great.
or want to play. Um, so yes, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your latest Kickstarter campaign, Dragonbane Trudvang. Hopefully, I'm saying that right.
Yep.
And to our viewers and listeners, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.